and welcome back to my channel where I'm going to do something a little different once again and look at an up-and-coming RPG that is due to enter a Kickstarter on August 31st of 2021. While this is not a sponsored video, I was contacted by Dragori Games and requested to see if there's anything I could do to make this community aware of the up-and-coming Kickstarter for the new RPG. And I agreed to take a look at the product and create a video of some of the basic information you might be interested in, as well as add my thoughts and opinions to the mix. Dragori Games does have a website, and you can find that here in this video, but I'm going to include it in the description below so that you can easily get access to it and take a look for yourself. I've actually clicked on the games and Tanares RPG link here. It takes a little bit for it to load, but once it's loaded, everything is there, and you can very quickly see everything that's associated with the actual Kickstarter campaign. The new RPG is called Tanares RPG, and it is set in a world that Dragori Games has already established with two previously kickstarted projects, Arena the Contest and the Tanares Adventures expansion set for the Arena. The basis of those two projects has been expanded into a full-fledged RPG that uses the 5th edition rule sets as a starting point, and they provide some additional concepts on top of it to make the world of Tanares and any campaign set within it an adventure all their own. While the world itself was initially presented as part of the overall concept within the Arena the Contest board game and its expansion, this Kickstarter will release a more thoroughly detailed concept of the world through both a campaign guide and a world map, as well as a complete player's guide. I'll go more into details about what's included in the Kickstarter package later, but right now I want to go over some of the basic information I've been able to glean from the sample resources I was provided. If you are familiar with current 5th edition rules, then you'll be right at home and up and running in relatively short order from the material that I've looked over. However, if you've never used a 5th edition rule set before, it looks like Dragori Games plans to provide enough details within the guides to get you up and running, and all you might have to do is simply reference the free materials from the 5th edition SRD content to clarify a few points that might not be overly clear. Based on the amount of detail defined within the sample adventure guide that is downloadable from their website, I suspect you will not even need to reference those materials, as it looks to be fairly self-contained. Now, an example of that is with this overview of Tanares itself. As you can see, there's quite a lot of detail in the actual content of the page, so they're cramming as much information into these examples that they're providing to us as they possibly can, giving us examples of some of the classes, a description of Tanares itself, providing some examples of a new class that's coming out here, for example, discussing the dragons, and how they apply and play into this world, and things like that. So there's a lot of detail here that you can go through and access through each of these sample materials and make a decision on your own as to whether you want to get involved. And I suspect the final version of this guide will provide enough detail and enough material for any dungeon master to be able to go through and create their own campaigns set within the world of Tanares. Additionally, the example player's guide provides more details about some of the various classes, including some of the new spells, features, and special abilities. It also showcases some of the new species a player can select for their characters, as seen in some of the sample character sheets at the end of the sample guide. For example, if I scroll down on the player's guide here, we can see that there's a Dragon Blade class that's involved here, and it goes into significant detail as about to what is included with that particular class, as well as the draconic powers that you're going to gain, as well as your features. A little bit further on down here, here they are, there are the spells and some of the features that you have. These would be your draconic powers. They also go over the Madwalker class, which I think is similar to a thief, but with some very unique capabilities. Specifically some abominational capabilities that allow you to change the shape of your character, which is kind of cool. And a little further down here, sorry, the guide is quite large and there's a lot of graphics here, so it's actually making my system work while I'm recording this. We also have the wizard class here, and then we start getting into the individual species that they include in the example that they've given us. There are also some items and features that they can show you here, spells for the cleric and the wizards, and so on and so forth. And then we can get down to the actual character sheets. So this is for the Dragon Blade. It's a level 3 character, and it goes to show you how the actual character sheet's going to be set up. And I believe as part of the Kickstarter, you're going to get samples of these that are blank. The final version of the player's guide is also going to be released as part of that Kickstarter, and it will be a full-fledged guide for any given player to use in creating their characters. Moving on, I've spent quite a bit of time going over this particular sample adventure, and it's a very interesting concept to a campaign, and I like the amount of detail that they put in here. And there isn't a space in this example or sample campaign that is blank that I can find short of the boundaries around the actual page. If they've got a spot for information, they've crammed information into this particular guide. And a lot of the basic concepts and overall ideas that they're putting into the world of Tanares itself, and specifically into the campaign guide, the DM's campaign guide, a lot of that is here. And it's primarily set up so that you can theoretically take this particular adventure guide and run the campaign without really referencing any other source material if you don't need to. For instance, it provides a really decent history of Tanares as part of the introduction and explains how the world got to where it is and why the rules are set in the way that they exist. The adventure itself seems quite structured, and a DM should have no trouble following along while keeping the party moving along through the campaign, but it also allows for some flexibility for those groups who like to meander a little bit during their campaigns, although not much. It gives the DM leeway on how far astray the characters can wander from the primary campaign and does not flood the DM with so many choices that they get lost, unlike some other campaigns that I've run into for other worlds. It also provides a set of guidelines that a Dungeon Master can use to rope those players back in, whether it's suddenly or as gently as they feel that they can. But at the same time, it's because of the way that this world is structured. It's designed to function in a very structural endpoint to endpoint concept when it comes to the campaign. And I find that that is actually a bit refreshing, because a lot of campaigns have now started to take this branching aspect of going, oh, well, we're going to give the Dungeon Master 30 options here that they can present to the players and try to figure a way around that. Okay, that's great, but a Dungeon Master is going to get lost in those details unless they're really experienced or really good. Whereas with this particular campaign, you're given information specific to the campaign itself, and it's going to be entirely up to you as to whether you inject anything into here that would make them meander a little bit, or whether the party decides to meander a little bit. It now gives you a means, if you will, to refer back to the other materials that they're going to release through the Kickstarter and come up with something that will sort of fill in that little meandering aspect of the campaign, and then allow you to, at that point, close that off, tie that off, and then bring them back into the campaign overall. In addition to that, some of the battle maps that they've gone through and set up in the sample campaign are also part of a separate sample package that you get when you sign up to receive more information. But the PDF itself shows them all cut up. So if you take a look at this particular battle map, if you will, that's part 4 of 6, part 5 of 6, and part 6 of 6. This gives you the option to print these off into individual pages and then tape them together, or some way connect them together so you get one larger map, rather than trying to fit your entire battle into one 8x11 sheet of paper, or if you're using A11 paper, the larger format that provides. Sorry, the A4 paper. Overall, the sample adventure guide looks like a very complete package, and I'd be surprised if the DM needs to reference anything outside of the guide unless they run into a tricky situation or must make a ruling on something that is not fully explained within the guide, which so far I haven't really seen. And for an adventure that is designed to be run as a single-shot campaign or multiple extended campaigns, this guide is densely packed with information, and I hope that bodes well for the overall campaign guide and the player's guide, as well as any future material that they plan to release, because we only have a limited view as to what they're showing us. In relation to the Kickstarter itself, they're definitely going to be separating things out into individual packages, and they intend to make those available as part of the campaign. And you do get to see an example of what they've got set up right now for packages if you go through and sign up for their marketing materials. However, I'm not going to show that on this recording simply because I'm not entirely convinced that the structure and the package sets that they have there are final. Although we're getting pretty close to when the campaign's going to move forward, I don't see them changing too much. And they have highlighted all of the items that they intend to include as part of this Kickstarter campaign inside of the information that you can find on their website. And this includes the campaign source guide, the player's guide, the adventurer's guide called the Realms of Madness Epic Adventure that you see here on the screen, a double-sided poster map, and I'm not sure if it's laminated or not. I've not been able to confirm that. A set of dice, spell and power cards, several miniatures, and there's also an app that will be used to increase the level of immersion for everyone, but as it's still in development, I don't want to say more than that at this time because I don't have a whole lot in the way of information around that. And finally, if you decide to back the campaign on day one or within the first 24 hours of the campaign starting, with the Essentials Kit, the Miniatures and Cards Kit, or the Super Kit pledge, then you will also acquire the Gold Dragon, I believe it's called Izenden, yeah, the Gold Dragon of Time, as part of your kit. You won't have to pay for it, which is a really cool incentive in my mind. Now, in relation to my thoughts and opinions on what I've seen thus far, Dragori Games has definitely taken the kernel of an idea and fleshed it out beautifully. And the fact that they may have taken an idea that started with a simple board game in mind and expanded on that and turned it into a fully functional RPG system leads me to believe they intend to continue to add more content to the world of Tanares. And it also helps that they had 2 successful campaigns when it came to the other 2 board games that they released, the expansion for the Arena one and the base Arena one. The level of detail included in the samples is absolutely insane, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the end results would look like content-wise. I'm also seriously impressed with the artistic nature and various scenes portrayed in all of the samples they have shown thus far, and it firmly sets my imagination into the world they are trying to present. I do have one concern, however, and that is that they might be trying to constrain the players into too tight of a box with the inflexibility of some of the world rules themselves. But as those rules primarily relate to the massive world-shaping events, it might be a non-issue. There will be some players that will rebel against that and really stress the DM to their wits' end in order to keep the campaign flowing somewhat smoothly. And I know, as a DM who has had that happen to them, it gets very uncomfortable and really degrades the performance of the Dungeon Master because all of their attention is now focused on that one player. And this kind of makes me think that this whole system is geared towards DMs who have many years of experience behind them or have established parties who have spent years playing RPGs together. Therefore, they're familiar with everyone's likes and dislikes. However, that may just be because of the limited amount of view that we have when it comes to the information that we've seen thus far. So I may be reading in too much, if you will, into that. And when we get to the point of actually seeing the full campaign guide, the actual full player's guide, as well as this adventure and any future adventures that they plan on releasing, in a lot more detail, my opinion might change on that. So right now, take that with a grain of salt in the sense that it's really probably due to the limited amount of information we're being presented as part of the samples. But other than the sample works and the map itself, there's enough information there to be tantalizing, but not enough to give us the whole picture of what the world will be like and what level of flexibility the DM will be able to work with. That does, however, bring me to the end of this video, and I hope you found it informative and useful, and I know I'll be checking things out when they go live myself. Remember that August 31st, 2021 is when the Kickstarter event starts, and I hope Dragori Games has a good, successful Kickstarter, and they achieve their goals that they're aiming for.